Good evening and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live from Cape May, New Jersey. Lovely, beautiful Cape May, New Jersey, which actually has been kind of overcast all day and looks like it's about to do some like horrible storm thing outside. And I had the wisdom to have the doors and windows open in the studio area of the crib today. So it should prove to be an interesting 2 hours. But anywho, I want to welcome everybody to the Facey Chat and welcome everybody to the show. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, solemn, and prayerful Good Friday, and that you have taken a moment to be thankful for what this day is all about. I'm actually a little bit surprised that it has not been mentioned as much. I guess I shouldn't be in the media and in different places that today is Good Friday. It seems to have nearly disappeared. I like that, Doug, a joyful Good Friday. Indeed, it is a joyful Good Friday because we would all be lost had it not been for Christ's sacrifice. For sure. And it was when we say that, we just don't, take it lightly. That sacrifice was not just a death. It was a horrific death. Every time I get to that part of the Bible reading, I just cringe having to read that. It was just a long, agonizing, excruciating death, and thank God for that. So I hope you all are enjoying Holy Week and enjoying just reflecting on this time and looking forward to Easter Sunday when we can joyfully say that, recall that He is risen. My guest for this evening, for the first hour, is Forbes columnist Nathan Lewis. He's going to talk to us about his new book, The Magic Formula. It's based on fundamental economic principles that allow for prosperity and individual wealth to thrive. I think you guys are going to really like it. Lower taxes. I think you guys are going to really like that. And I'm going to send you a link to one of his latest articles, which talks about how Stephen Moore and Herman Cain could help a stable economy. It's in New World Economics. It's actually really a fabulous article, and I think you guys will all like it. I'm going to stick it in the Facey Chat. You guys should share that article, as I know you will, and I know you'll love that article. So we're going to talk to Nathan the first hour, and then our second hour, we're going to speak with Dr. Stanley Robertson. He's a best-selling author who's going to talk to us about how the ability to quit is the last principle of success, which I thought was very interesting. I met him at one of the national publicity summits that I attended, which is actually where I was last weekend. I had the honor of being invited to go back there to New York City and Manhattan, where the show was featured once again. Good afternoon, Richard Herschel Griffin. Welcome back to the show in the Facey Chat. Go back once again, and I ran into him again. I'm looking forward to having him on the show. Unfortunately, he was bumped because I was a guest on another show and overstayed. Hi, Ron Edwards in the Facebook chat. What did he say? President recorded a nice tribute to both Passover and Easter Sunday, but the media has not aired it. I did not hear it at all, Ron Edwards. If I can grab that, I will try to play it. If you know where that is, Ron Edwards, and want to post it someplace so I can play it, that would be lovely. But if I can find it, I will certainly play it on my show. And but speaking of Ron Edwards, I think this is a brand new Ron Edwards notebook. I'm not totally positive. I got a little lost, Ron Edwards, so I apologize if this is not a Ron Edwards notebook. I had to play it. I had not heard it before, but the date I wasn't sure about the date, so Just so you know, Ron Edwards. And by the way, Ron Edwards is going to be a guest on my show on April 26th, the 6 o'clock hour, and the 5 o'clock hour is going to be the one and only Lonnie Poindexter. So it should be an interesting 2 hours. All that spirituality and handsomeness in 2 hours. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. So that's going to be on April 26th on Money Talk with Melanie. I have a few tentative topics that will be discussed, but we have not completely settled on what's going on with those, but I'm looking forward to that. Some other housekeeping items. If you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing? At Money Talk Mel, you should be following the show on Twitter. If you want to get some of the archive shows, you can do so. MoneyTalkWithMelanie.com is up and running. You can grab an archive show there at MoneyTalkWithMelanie.com. Also, while I'm thinking about it, I'd like to thank my sponsors. You know, you can get one of these fantastic mugs from, check this out, Biz Social Personal Touch. This is one of my sponsors, John Campbell. He will probably, during the show, post a link to how you can expand your personal biz social personal touch by buying one of these products for one of your clients. He sent this as a gift to me, and I quite enjoy it. You all know that I love my coffee mugs, and so he sent this to me as a gift, which I very much appreciate. And of course, it helps to do one of the things that I do here on my show, which is help to promote my sponsors. I also want to thank Mr. CreditRepair.biz. Thank him so much. And also the one and only Tax Mama, who I'm sure is probably on some remote island somewhere recovering from tax season. Tax Mama, the one and only Eva Rosenberg. I want to thank her. My mug on a mug. That is very true, Richard. So what else do we have to talk about? I don't know if you guys heard that there was no collusion and no obstruction and no collusion. And the Democrats are still like super mad. Hi, Bill Crowther. How are you? He's a local. I'm on spring break, Bill, so we have to get together and, you know, do what the locals do, hang out a little bit. But I looked, for those of you who are not aware, I live in a shore town, resort area, and this is Easter weekend is kind of like the beginning of when the tourists kind of come down. But we enjoy our beach area too, as well. So it's kind of fun. So whenever a local comes in the Facey chat, I always have to say hello to my locals. But anyhow, yeah, there's no collusion, no obstruction, but the Democrats are bound and determined to try to say that there isn't. And Eric Swalwell, who I have grown to really detest, I really don't like that man, admitted today, and I don't know if anybody saw that, admitted today that they actually really and truly did spy on the Trump campaign, which we've known all this time. He told somebody on Fox, I don't remember who the host was that he was talking to, that, you know, they had to spy on his campaign. I thought all this time that they said they had not been spying on a Trump campaign. That was the narrative. And he totally admitted that they did, which we all knew that they had, but they said that, you know, Donald Trump was out of his mind and like super crazy when he said he was being spied on. But he was. Anywho, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. My guests today are Nathan Lewis for the first hour. Very excited to talk to him. I'm going to talk to him about the magic formula. I'm going to talk to him about Stephen Moore and Herman Cain and their appointments that are coming up. I do want to talk to him a little bit about that. I think that's in the news and really relevant, but I do want to talk to him about the magic formula as well. And then, of course, in the second hour, we have Dr. Stanley Robertson and talk to him about the benefit of quitting. But right now, coming your way is a brand new Ron Edwards notebook. We'll be right back.
Is nationalism racist, or are those attacking nationalism racist? Hello, I'm Ron Edwards on today's page from the Edwards Notebook. To be nationalist means to appreciate the nation you were born in. It also means that you want your country to thrive, be strong, and have more opportunities for your children than you had. Nationalists often called racist because it is assumed that only white people like America and want her to be great. Many anti-nationalists love to tell black Americans that they are simple victims who just can't make it here in America because the deck is stacked against us. They are the same simpletons who convince some black people that the requirement to show an identification at the voting booth is racist because we blacks are supposed to be unable to get proper identification. Yet we can't drive or purchase a new washing machine without showing identification. So, my fellow Americans, who are the authentic racists? The nationalist who seeks to build upon America's finer attributes, including opportunities, or those telling black Americans you can only exist on lower standards than everyone else. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us and 12 a.m. Sundays on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school. And if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
Right now, you can get the credit you deserve. Just visit MrCreditRepair.biz. Let their expert credit repair specialist remove late payments, charge-offs, collections, even old bankruptcies fast and easy. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Why go anyplace else? Increase your credit score today. At Mr. Credit, you always get a quality service all at our everyday discounted price. Stop getting turned down for cars, credit cards, or even new homes. Visit MrCreditRepair.biz today. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Your credit repair is our #1 priority.
And we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. My next guest is a contributor to Forbes magazine. He actually does some really great writing. His name is Nathan Lewis. He has 15 years of experience in the asset management industry. He's formerly served as an economic analyst for firms providing institutional investment research and later helped manage money for hedge funds. He's written 2 books on monetary topics and has participated in television documentaries on economic topics in South Korea, China, Russia, and Britain. He's spoken at events hosted by the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the American Principles Project, and others. His writing has appeared in the Financial Times, the Huffington Post, Nikkei Business, Daily Reckoning, Japan Times, Daily Yomiuri, I'm sure I didn't pronounce that correctly, Asian Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones Newswires, Worth, and other publications. Without further ado, Nathan Lewis, how are you?
Hi, Melanie. It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you on the show today. You really have a wonderful body of work, just very informative and not for nothing, just right up my alley and right up the alley of my audience. So I'm very glad to have you on the show today. I'm very glad to have your just really knowledgeable perspective. Are you still there? Do I still?
Great to be here.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad that I still have you. I wasn't sure. So the box that you were in just went away, and I was like, oh no, do I still have them? Good. I'm glad that I have you here. Before I go anywhere else, I really want to talk about your latest article about Stephen Moore and Herman Cain, just because it's so in recent news. About those recent, they haven't. I don't think they've been formally nominated for anything yet, but that's the scuttlebutt in the news, so to speak. Has President Trump? I think he's actually nominated Stephen Moore, but hasn't actually nominated Herman Cain just yet. I think that's where we are in the cycle. But I really like the article that you wrote. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Sure. I like them too. I like Steve Moore and Herman Cain. They're known mostly for their fiscal policy, their tax reform ideas, and so forth. But I think both of them really understand what I call the magic formula. What the new book's about. Low taxes is one part of the magic formula. The other part is stable money, and these guys really get it. And a lot of academics don't get it. All of academia, they're all trying to manipulate the economy by distorting interest rates, distorting currency values. And they're all trying to pull smoke and mirrors tricks on people. And the idea behind stable money, which Steve Moore and Herman Cain definitely get, is when you take all the smoke and mirrors away and everything's kind of simple and obvious and clear, then guess what? Businessmen can make better decisions, and they're not investing in things that are somewhat dubious, and they're not hiring people that they're going to have to fire later or whatever, right?
Right.
And when everyone is exactly, and when everyone's able to make better decisions, then the economy does better. It's a pretty simple idea, and it's actually the idea on which the United States was, one of the founding principles of the United States. And I think it's important to have someone like that on the board.
Well, because if the government is cooking the books, and this was the whole, situation, during the Obama years, frankly, during the whole, quantitative easing era, when the government is cooking the books, then, your CEOs and your decision makers have to wait around and wonder when the government is going to stop doing what it's doing rather than letting the natural economic fundamentals do what they do.
Exactly right. And sometimes you can fool people, but a lot of times you're not fooling them at all, right? CEOs of major companies and stuff, they've seen administrations come and go. They've seen Fed governors stand up and say stupid things. And when the Fed people are trying to pull strings and do funny things, they just sit back and say, I don't have any visibility here. I'm not going to make a 10, 20-year commitment into some investing in some business when these guys are all goofing off, right? Let's just twiddle our thumbs and wait for better times. It's kind of what happens sometimes. I think it's happening in Japan. I think it's kind of happened here since 2000, the crisis of 2008. And you get that kind of real stagnant kind of economy, I think.
Indeed. I was about to say, I think that something similar is happening abroad with China and with Japan, like you were saying. I think it's a similar situation where they're like, well, Trump's not going to be around. Trump is kind of a joke. He's not going to be around that long, especially with all that the liberals had going on with the collusion and nonsense and the obstruction nonsense. They thought, how long is his presidency real? It really was. That's how it was really messing up his agenda. Was the thought that do we really have to worry about these tariffs? Because how long is he really going to be president? If he's going to be going to jail or whatever. So they're going to. Yeah. They're gonna wait it out if the establishment's going to continue to run things and artificially mess with the economy like they had been doing.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that one of the reasons I really like Stephen Moore and Herman Cain is that they get that, right. Of course, Herman Cain is a businessman,
right?
And they get that. And they say, if you want a strong economy, which we do want, you gotta make an environment where businessmen can thrive, right? And that's what I wrote the book about, the magic formula. It's real simple: low taxes and stable money. And we've all heard, we can't tax. These are aphorisms that are about 100 years old, right? You can't tax yourself to prosperity. Okay, I think Winston Churchill said that in the 20s.
Now, why? Explain for people who don't understand. Because there may be there may be some people who really don't I think there are people who really don't understand why you can't. Because I try to explain this to people who don't understand economics, why you can't. Because I honestly think that they think that business people, that it's not real money. Explain why you can't. I'm serious. Like they don't they don't think it's real money. Like they think the business people go to a different place to get their money than like private people do. No, it comes from like the same place. A bank account. Like
it's real simple. I mean, what is an economy? It's two things. Either you work for yourself, right? You go in your own yard and you grow potatoes, or you do something, or you knit your own sweater. You produce for your own self, or you cooperate with someone else, right? Like you say, well, I don't know how to knit a sweater, so I'll grow some potatoes and and give it to my friend, and then my friend will knit me a sweater in return, right? So now you're trading, right? You're interacting with each other. And so there's no process of business or investment or production where when you trade with each other and cooperate with each other, the government takes your stuff, right? Right? The situation isn't improved when the government just comes in and says, "Well, we're going to take some of your potatoes. Thank you." No, that's in regular life that's known as banditry or thievery. Now, it has to be said that there are certain government services which have been proven to be necessary. First, you got to protect yourself from foreign invasion. Okay, that's kind of obvious,
right?
And then people have to protect themselves domestically from domestic criminals, right? You need the government to have a police force so some private person doesn't come and steal your potatoes, basically, right?
Right.
And so there's always been a requirement for some basic level of services, which are that, and of course you have to fund them, so you have to have some taxes. But all the other things that we've added on to government, there's always a trade-off. Is whatever the new service is, library or something, or national park, probably pretty worthwhile. Is the value of the service worth the economic drag of having more taxes? So every time you add more taxes, it gets harder and harder to do business. And we've basically spent 100 years in experimenting with this all over the world, right? Taxes were very low in the late 19th century. And then from World War I to the present, now a little over 100 years, we've had every kind of tax, every kind of experiment all around the world. And we've seen that what Winston Churchill said in the 1920s is true. You can't tax yourself to prosperity. The higher taxes go, and the more kind of complicated taxes are, the more problems you have.
Indeed. That is exactly right. And it just seems, listen, I know I work in politics, and I work on campaigns, and I will tell you one thing that is very revealing is when you go door to door on behalf of a candidate. One of the latest complaints that I hear is that there was no tax cut. Okay? Right. Donald Trump didn't give you a tax cut. And then when you start to talk to people, they don't even know the difference between their local taxes, their state taxes, and their federal taxes. And when you start to ask a few questions, you start to realize that they don't make a distinction between the three. And then when you explain to them, well, was this check bigger? And was this part smaller? Well, then there was your tax cut. So actually, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, there wasn't a lot of tax cuts for individuals in the last round. They wanted to do them, but just kind of the congressional budgeting rules. Right. They weren't allowed to do it. So the first thing they wanted to focus on was the corporate rate, because U.S. basically all the governments in the world. You hear that taxes are high in Europe, and it's true they have very high VAT and payroll taxes, but their corporate rates are actually much lower. And the U.S. is becoming very uncompetitive, but U.S. had among the highest corporate tax rates in the world, and it had to be fixed because, two things are going to happen. U.S. corporations are going to kind of wither and die, or they're going to go somewhere else.
Right, and that's what they were doing.
Because withering and dying is not that much fun, right?
Right.
So actually, the Trump tax cut, which brought the federal rate to 21%, and actually when you add state taxes, 24%, it actually brought the U.S. rate to right around the OECD average, the average of the developed world. So we're just catching up to everybody else with that one. It had to be done. It was high priority.
And the thing is that it's perfectly logical when you understand, well, where do many people work? They work at businesses. And if the businesses are not here, then you don't have a job. But,
exactly.
But a lot of people fail to make that connection. That's the problem. Like they'll say, well, those tax cuts went to corporations, as if that were this horrible thing. It's like, well, where do you think people work? like you're not following the logic. Like, people don't follow the logic all the way out. And I find it very frustrating. I don't know about you. But
one of the reasons I wanted to write this book is because I wanted to really kind of get out there what a very small group, even more is part of it, and I can tell, like, I'm part of it too, and it's only like 20 guys, or 50 guys, which is way too small. They don't understand what actually happens what actually happens is if you just get a little bit improvement in growth, 1% a year, which you can barely even see, that adds up to a lot very quickly. If you only have, in just 10 years, for example, your economy is going to be 10% bigger. And if your economy is 10% bigger, then your tax revenues are going to be roughly 10% higher. And since our tax revenues are now, 3.6 trillion or so, you're talking about $360 billion a year of more taxes from reducing the tax rate. So it's $360 billion a year, year after year, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. 10 years later, it's up to 800 billion. Just money coming in from the extra productivity of the economy, right? If your apple orchard is growing more apples, then you can, there's more apples to harvest.
So,
apple
right.
tax, if you will.
So then what happens to the people? What happens to the company? And then how does that affect the people? Like, I feel like that's where the disconnect is, because the people don't feel like allow me to rephrase. There are people who feel like they don't benefit when the companies get bigger. That like, the guy on the Monopoly board. I know he has a name, but I can't remember his name. The guy with the monocle.
Right.
Like every company has that guy, and he just runs away with his pockets full every time. That, like, I think that there are people who think that there's that guy at every company, and whenever they make more money, that guy just runs away with all the money. And that's not how it works. So what?
Right. Well, one of the reasons we kind of have this sense is statistically, the median income in the United States has been stagnant for a long time.
Right.
So people are kind of saying, well, when is this going to benefit us? Well, actually, it is kind of benefiting them, because if without some of the things that have been done, you wouldn't even just be stagnant; you would be well into decline, I think.
Yep.
But nevertheless, it's a real problem. Well, how are you going to fix that? Basically, you have to increase. It's kind of like supply and demand. You got to increase the demand. Behind every job is an investment, right? That's what creating jobs is. It's investing money in new businesses. And you have to have an environment where people want to make investments in new businesses. And then, you got to get the economy going. That's where that job creation comes from. And ultimately, the economy has to get strong enough for you kind of reaching down into the lower half, if you will, the less skilled and so forth. And another thing I think is important that Trump does sense is that you can't, supply and demand, where you can't have too much supply either. We've had this endless flood of, for the most part, low-skilled immigrants coming in, which has, I think, hurt the average American worker a lot. But we're kind of dealing with that too. But the only way to improve these things, you're going to have a stronger economy. We now talk about 3% growth like it's some kind of promised land. Well, it would have been considered extremely mediocre in the past. There's actually, the economist Paul Krugman, who writes for the New York Times.
Yes.
He actually wrote a book in the middle of the 90s called The Age of Diminished Expectations, which basically the theme of the book is how much the economy of the mid-90s was disappointing and stagnant compared to the economy of the 60s. But now we today look at the economy of the mid-90s. We look at the economy of the mid-90s like that was some kind of, happy time. We feel like we're well below that.
I thought it was about my dating life. No, I'm just kidding. I had to. It was just too easy. But but it's very true. What you're saying is exactly true. And I think the economy was stagnant for so long. 3% is like, yay. You know what I mean? We're, woo, 3%.
Well, there's a debate of whether it's even possible. I mean, among like the kind of big think guys, like, well, you know, secular stagnation. Like, of course, it's possible. You know, we could be at 5%. We could be at 6%.
Right, and now we're shouting about that. Oh my gosh, we could hold out at 4% for 6 months. Oh my, you know, but it really is, and I'm excited about the prospects of Steve Moore getting in there. That would be amazing, because I think they say he's not really an economist, but whatever. But Donald Trump's not really a president, but there he is.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Well, unfortunately, in the world of economics, there's a bunch of academics who think that only people with PhDs can be economists, and there's everybody else who ignores them.
Oh, please don't even,
because they're so mediocre, you know.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. I'm in education. You don't have to tell me. I'm working on my PhD, and I've given my friends permission to smack me if I ever start acting that way when I finish. Like every PhD I know is, not every PhD I know, but many that I know are pretty obnoxious. So I tell my friends repeatedly, when I finish, feel free to smack the you-know-what out of me if I ever start acting crazy. Because academics is not the same. It's not the same. Like, you read a lot of books. Get over yourself. If people, and especially, like, there's some real, if you have any type of self-awareness while you're working on your doctorate, any type of self-awareness whatsoever, you understand what's going on. It's such a scam. I'm sorry. It just is. But you realize there's like certain things you have to do to get certain places and do certain things and gain a certain amount of respect. There is, but it's a scam.
Well, unfortunately, academia for economics has just been like crazy dogma, which has very little relation to the real world. Mm-hmm. And that's why we need guys like Steve Moore and Herman Cain, who are real world guys. But one of the things I want to get in, which I kind of get into in the book, is it's not just about like, a little bit of extra money to pay for some kind of social program. Economies and countries get into what I call a spiral of success, where they start implementing these policies that create a stronger economy, and it just kind of gets better and better and better. So what happens when you have a stronger economy? Well, there's less unemployment, right? And the economy gets bigger. What happens then? The tax revenues go up, and they can go up a lot. They can go up 2, 3, 5 times. Not just 10%. Over a period of years. And things, and then the economy's bigger. So when your GDP is getting larger and larger and larger, not just 5% larger, but 100% larger, 200% larger, your debt to GDP ratio is going down, right? Because the denominator is getting bigger, and then there's more money coming in, and there's less demand for spending because everyone has jobs. You don't have all the neediness, right? Politically, there's much less pressure for all these socialistic things. All that stuff just becomes, very minor.
Is there a higher tolerance for cutting some of the social programs and things like that when the economy is more prosperous?
Yeah, it's exactly one of the things you see over and over again. It's very simple. If you want to cut, you always get these like austerity guys, like, we're going to raise taxes and cut spending. Well, the first thing you're going to do is raise taxes. You're going to have a worse economy, and when you have a worse economy, you've got all these people out of work, and you're never going to be able to cut spending when right. Right?
Right, because
you got to have a strong economy, and then everyone says, we don't need all those social programs anymore. Well, those just shrink automatically because people get jobs.
Very true.
And then you can then go and cut headcount from the government and stuff. And we've seen that. We've actually seen this process happen in Britain and other places, and even in the United States. But what happens when you get on the other side is if you start raising taxes, what happens then? Well, we just kind of talked. You're just seeing it now in places like New York State and New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, to some degree California, all these high tax states. People leave, the economy starts to stink. There's lots of unemployment. What happens, right? Tax revenue goes down because whenever the economy's bad, the revenue goes down. unemployment and all the spending stuff goes up, and now you have a big deficit, right? Revenue down, spending up, you have a big deficit. What's the next step? Another tax hike, right? And it just goes around and around and around. And you just tax yourself into oblivion. And then on the national level, if you have control over the currency, what happens next, right? Well, you say, well, we got all these economic problems, and so let's start leaning on the central bank because it seems like the central bank can do this, that, and the other, and it's effective, and it doesn't cost any money, right? And so they start doing that, and then you start to blow up the other half of the magic formula, right? You lose your stable money. You got this unreliable currency. There's all this like interest rate, currency, quantitative easing manipulation stuff going on, and things just get worse and worse and worse. And it's not just a recession or something like that. As I kind of write about in the book, whole empires can collapse from this. The Spanish Empire, disintegrated because of this. The British Empire, Britain used to have an empire. It didn't take very long of this high taxes, unstable money stuff before it lost the empire. And the United States could go down the same path. I think we're at a bit of a crossroads here where things have been kind of fairly stable for quite a while, about 30 years. But I feel like going forward, we're either going to become a lot more socialist or we're going to become a lot more capitalist. We're either going to do the Bernie Sanders 70% tax rate stuff, or we're going to go with the, Trump, Steve Forbes 15% flat tax stuff. Eventually, not right away.
Right. I like that flat. And Steve Forbes wrote the foreword to your book, correct?
Yeah, he's one of the guys who really understands this. Forbes is such a great guy.
Forbes is Forbes.
And one of our leading intellectuals, because he really gets both sides of this. There are a number of tax guys people who promote tax reform as a growth step, but don't really get the money side, don't really get the stable money side. And there's some stable money people who don't really get the tax reform side. But Forbes really combines them both. And I wanted to get this, I want other people to see that vision too.
Yeah, it's really true. And the problem, as I see it too, is with the policies behind how we handle our money. Like you said that, that the need for some of the programs that we have naturally goes down because people will use those policies less, the social programs and things less, if there's more jobs. And
right.
And fundamentally that's true, but that doesn't mean that they'll cut the budget. That doesn't mean that partisans won't fight to keep from cutting that budget. And that's where I personally see there being an issue, because as I'm sure you're aware, in public budgeting, everybody who's involved in those areas of public budgeting fights to keep their budget where it is, because they know if it's not used, it'll get cut. And nobody wants to use less money. And we also know that when the government says that they're cutting the budget, what they mean is they're not asking for more money next year. It's a totally different type of speech. When the government says, right? Remember that too, right? That they use different speech than we use. When the government says, when I say I'm cutting my budget for next month, I literally mean, when I say, I think my clothing budget should be $100 less next month, I literally mean $100 less. I don't mean I'm not increasing my budget $100. You know what I mean? That's not the way.
The cuts are a reduction in the growth rate. Yeah.
Exactly. Government Inevitably, that's what the government means. And so when you think about, and I hope everybody followed what I was saying just now, but when the government says that they're cutting the budget, that's what they mean, that they're not going to grow it anymore. And that's completely different. And I think it's a big misunderstanding out there, and not to get too much in the weeds, but I think that that's part of the problem, with our deficit and with how the money. Part of the problem is how we're handling our money in the government, how the government handles our money in earnest is part of the issue.
there are a couple things I think that are going on. One is a lot of the federal budget is basically on autopilot, right? It's debt service, it's benefits to federal employees, it's Social Security, it's Medicare, and all these entitlement programs. There is not. It's going to have some defense. You can't just cut the defense budget by 50%. So a lot of it is. It's kind of on autopilot. The genuinely discretionary part of the U.S. federal budget is, it's 15%, it's 20%. Well, and I think you get this attitude in Washington is like, well, we can't really fix the problem, with just by monkeying with this little 15% that we actually can change. So why bother, right? Why don't I just, why cause all the pain?
You mean why do the work?
Because we're not going to. But and so I think that's been part of our problem in the U.S. And I think that we will eventually get over that hump, and so we make big changes, right? No one wants to make any big changes, but I think we'll eventually, not right away, but eventually get to the point where we will make big changes. And I think this is a time when conservatives have to say what they want, and I take a little time in my book to say what I want. Because the Democrats are standing up and saying what they want, right? Oh, we want the Green New Deal. We want, 70% tax rates. We want crazy socialist stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're saying it all. Unicorns and kittens for every child. And, I mean, they're just going for it.
Yeah, which is I don't like their ideas, but it's kind of a healthy process. Say what you want. Well, conservatives, instead of just saying, oh, I don't like that idea very much, well, what do we want? So I just put a little list of what I want. I propose that we take, you take all the social-related spending in the federal budget, all of the welfare, all the health-related, all the education, which most of it dates from the 60s anyway, right? I mean, it wasn't in the federal budget until just a little while ago. Take all that stuff, we'll keep Social Security for now, and just put it down the states. So would basically just cancel it. Say, January 1st, a year from now, all these programs, the federal level, gone. We're going to fire everybody. We're going to shut down the lights. You states have to take care of it. Well, the states already are involved in all these things. States already have their own welfare system. They already have health care and stuff. So it would allow the states to actually implement whatever system they like. So California can do single-payer health care. Right? Great. Go right ahead. Texas can do school choice or whatever, right? The various states can have their own solutions. And of course, then you get competition. You get to try out various experiments and find out what works. And, some takes time. It'd be a very interesting environment.
Oh, yes. It'd be like the Wild West, but the entire country would be the Wild West.
Yeah, so it'd be really neat because you get all this experimentation. Of course, then what you also get is competition, right?
Oh, yes.
People don't like California's system. What? We're planning to leave Texas anyway. We're just going to bump up our plans.
Right.
And so you see some really interesting stuff that way. That's what government lacks, right? Competition.
That's all it lacks is competition.
And at the federal level, we basically get back to where we were in 1955 or so, and I think eventually we would like to spin off the Social Security program into private accounts, which is known as a Provident Fund system. Over 30 countries use it. But let's leave that for another time. We get back to the federal government would basically consist of the military, foreign affairs, immigration, trade, foreign trade, which is actually what it says the federal government is supposed to be in the Constitution. And it would be a lot smaller. So you could actually fund the federal government, I've figured out, with probably about a 10% national sales tax. No more income tax, no more payroll taxes, 10% national sales tax, and you're done.
I like it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, wait.
Makes sense, right?
It's
actually the Constitution. It actually is the Constitution. It's actually the government we had until about 1960.
Yeah, until the African Americans got all that awesome help that we got. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, there was something to it, but yeah, the war on poverty and all this stuff of the 60s.
Yeah,
we're still gonna have all this stuff. We're still gonna have some kind of government health care, but it's gonna be at the state level. And if you don't like it, you can go to a different state, right?
Well,
I like the taxes that are involved. So I think that would be pretty interesting, and it's actually the system that
it's consistent with it's very consistent. No, it's very consistent with the Constitution, which was working.
Yeah.
You know,
what happened before we did all that? What happened when we had the original Constitution? We became the most successful, wealthiest country in the world. What happened since then? We became a country that we want to make great again.
Well,
right.
You know, it was never all that great to hear some people tell it. You know, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and they posted this video about, they were explaining, I love when people explain institutional racism to me as if I'm not black. Because I don't hold these traditional black values, they explain things to me as if I'm white, which I find very entertaining. It was all this economic stuff about how I'm not successful because of all this institutional stuff and being brown here. And I was like, I could have been born brown in a country where I had to walk 10 miles to get clean water. But instead I was born here in the United States where there's opportunity everywhere. So yeah, there was redlining, but also I'm in the land of opportunity. So why don't I focus on that? Like, I don't know what you want. I don't know what you want from me. Like, I could have been born in a much less awesome place. Yeah, there are things about, the United States that are less than awesome, but there are some way less awesome places I could have been born. So, just what, you know what I mean? Like, I'm literally in like the most prosperous country on earth. What, and you want me to like sit around whining about like this like small period in history in comparison, really, when things weren't so hot? I'm not going to do that. It's the greatest place, and there's workarounds, tons of them. I'm 2 years from my PhD. I'm a teacher. I'm a professor. I got my own podcast. I'm talking to you. Like, what is there to want? What is there to complain about? I did not see one colored water fountain all day today. So I think we're doing okay here, fundamentally.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's not really my, my little sector of expertise, but another thing that happened in the 60s is we began to undermine the principle of freedom of association. I think that's something that conservatives are going to have to talk about and fix. Of course, we don't want the government to discriminate, right? We don't want to have laws with all the force of police power saying we don't like your skin color.
Right.
But, individual people and business people, they want to talk with who they want to talk to, right?
And I say let them.
Interact with who they want to interact with, because, you meet some guy and because now you're criminalizing, it's basically thought crime, right?
Yep.
You say you meet a black person and you don't want to become whatever, you decide not to associate with that person for some reason or for no reason, right? You just don't. There are 100 people you meet in a day, you associate with 10 of them, 90% of them, 90 of them, you say no thanks. Well, now we have to decide whether you committed a crime because you made your decision because of the color of his skin, right? How do you determine that?
I prefer to know.
It's a thought crime, right? What were you thinking?
I prefer to know. When we're banning the Confederate flags, I'm like, why are you doing that? If somebody up here wants to, don a Confederate flag because they're a racist, I prefer to know. We live in a free country. Be free to carry your flag, so that I know that you're not somebody that you would prefer that I not approach you. That's good to know. It's a free country. You would like me to avoid you. I will be kind and avoid you, and it's a great thing. Like it doesn't really have to be a thing, honestly. So why are we like forcing people to do things that they don't want to do? Let's just all be free and be cool about it. Doesn't have to be a thing. It's all right. But that's how I feel about it. I don't know. I think it's weird. Like as long as you're not hurting anyone. If that's how you feel, maybe you have a reason for that. I think it's weird, but all right. Like I don't know. But we live in my point was we live in this very prosperous country, and if we just like you were saying, if we just left the fundamentals alone and stop screwing with them, things will be fine. Things will be fine. We like no one group like needs the help. The way the Constitution set it up was cool for everybody. Just kind of leave it alone. Yeah. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The principle of the magic formula was built into the Constitution when it was written, 1789. They actually some people don't know this. Direct taxation, like an income tax, was unconstitutional. Effectively,
absolutely.
They could basically only charge sales taxes.
Yep.
And it took an amendment in 1913 to legalize an income tax.
Yep, because it was illegal.
And maybe that was a big mistake, right? Maybe that was a big mistake. And in fact, one of the interesting things that I get into my book is that there's a reason why direct taxation was essentially unconstitutional in the Constitution, is because it's actually a tradition going back through Britain, through the early British Anglo-Saxon period, going back all the way to the Romans, that said direct taxation is a direct violation of the principles of liberty. It's actually like going back even to the Greeks, 2,500 year tradition that says basically no income taxes, and we violated that in 1913, and we're kind of paying the price here.
We were supposed to not. That was part of the reason why we left. We were supposed to.
Yeah, that was right. Why we left Britain. Absolutely.
That was why.
And the other aspect that was in the Constitution is actually the Federal Reserve is doing all this kind of like funny money, paper, fiat currency stuff. Well, the American colonies are actually kind of the great pioneers of that. They had 100 years of fiat paper money experiments in the American colonies, and the results were so mediocre that it was actually banned in the Constitution as well. That's why all that went away until same year, 1913. The Federal Reserve was introduced, and that was just the beginning of it. It wasn't until 1971 that we got all this floating currencies and interest rate manipulation and all that stuff. But the original Constitution, it's the magic formula: low taxes and stable money. It's all right there.
There it is. Where can we get the book?
Amazon's fine. There's print, hardcover, and Kindle ebook versions as well.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. You did such a great job.
Thank you.
Just so you know, people in the Facey chat were like, this guy really knows his stuff, really great guest, et cetera, et cetera. So they loved you. And I will make sure that I tag you in I think I can tag you, or I'll at least make sure I tag you in a tweet when I post the podcast, so you can share it with your audience as well.
Super. It's been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, Nathan. You're the best.
Thanks, Melanie.
All right. Have a good one. You are listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. That was Nathan Lewis. He does such a fantastic job. He's a Forbes columnist. He has a book coming. He has a book called The Magic Formula. He did a really great job explaining just the fundamentals of economics and why stable money and low taxes are fundamental to a healthy and strong economy. And I hope you will go and pick up his book. We are going to go to a commercial break, and I'm going to get in contact with Dr. Stanley G. Robertson. He's going to tell us about why it's a good idea to quit, why that is the best principle of success. You're going to like this guy, I think, very much. We'll be back in a few moments.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday, from 7 to 9 a.m., right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
and all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events? All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lynn Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lynn himself, Jeff Dunnis. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com and Lynn Radio. We fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lynn Radio Show with Jeff Dunnis. Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic, concealed carry, and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
New show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there. For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy, and catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's no surrender ever, because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish reviews to make it sad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and thank you so much for hanging out with me for my first hour with Nathan Lewis, the author and Forbes columnist, the writer of the book, The Magic Formula, and welcome to our second hour with Dr. Stanley G. Robertson. He is a best-selling author of the book. He's going to talk to us, the book Quit, The Last Principle of Success, which I thought was just a very interesting topic. We don't usually think about not quitting, don't quit, try until you drop dead, and all those kinds of mantras. And I thought quitting as a way to success was just an interesting philosophy. And so when I met him, I definitely wanted to have him on the show. And so I have him on hold here. And I want to thank everybody who was listening. I wanted to make sure that I give my sponsors a shout out. Am I getting tired already? I didn't even work today. Why am I tired? I want to thank Eva Rosenberg, a.k.a. the Tax Mama, John Campbell from Biz Social Personal Touch, where I got my lovely mugs, the Business Diva and Biz Social Personal Touch, the partnership, and, of course, Robert Houston with Mr. Credit Repair.biz. So without further ado, Dr. Stanley G. Robinson, how are you?
Hey, Melody, I'm doing outstanding. It's wonderful to be with you, and I appreciate you inviting me on.
I appreciate you being on the show. So before we do what? First day hosting, first day on the show, first day doing. So let me start again. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about your background, if you would?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a doctorate degree in business and accounting. I have a law degree, and I work as a chief financial officer of an organization here in Chicago. And I'm an author and a speaker, so I've written several books. And my latest book, as you mentioned, is Quit, The Last Principle of Success.
Oh, you fancy. You got all the degrees. Doctorate. Now, wait a minute. Now, you have a doctorate in business and accounting and a JD with a doctorate in law.
Well, both. I have a doctorate in business and accounting, and then I have a law degree.
Well, okay. I guess that's why you get to wear the hat.
Well, that hat is pretty amazing. Everybody seems to love that hat. A lot of people are familiar with straw hats, but that particular one is called a boater.
It's a great hat.
B-O-A-T-E-R.
It's a really great hat. I do like the hat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very, very nice. Very good. Okay. And did you say you were a CEO, CFO?
CFO, Chief Financial Officer.
Right. Okay. Excellent. All right. Very good. I don't know what it is about the business and law degree thing. I'm finishing my doctorate in business with the concentration in public administration. And people are like, oh, so you'll be done with school. And I'm like, actually thinking about a law degree after that.
A law degree is a very good thing. A law degree is something that, in terms of business, it opens up a lot of doors for you, and it brings in a lot of new opportunities. Right, exactly. Especially if you're involved in politics, which I am. Okay. Yeah. Well, these are exciting times for politics. Either exciting or dismal. I guess depends on your perspective. I have a feeling we're going to talk about that. So I love your background. That's fantastic. And so your latest book is Quit, The Last Principle of Success. What other books have you written? I wrote a book called Guidelines for a Master, which is a book that deals with happiness. The subtitle is 12 Steps to an Extremely Happy Life. So that book is designed to help people understand the things that they might do in order to live a better life and be more happy. And I wrote another book called The Straw Man Fallacy. Ooh. That book deals with that book I wrote some time ago. It was a critique of Michael Eric Dyson in one of the books that he wrote, where he criticized Bill Cosby. But this happened before, Bill Cosby's current troubles. But in any case, I was making the argument in that particular book that Michael Dyson had written a book, and the book that he wrote was filled with logical fallacies, and I was exposing those fallacies for the world to see. Well, that's first year doctorate class. Right. Right. Exactly. Which I find in the political world super handy.
That was like my favorite class. I can't remember what class it was the one where you find out about all the fallacies and arguments. That I was like, yeah, I'm holding on to this. I'll be bookmarking this information because I feel like it's going to come in.
And it was kind of surprising about Michael Eric Dyson. Michael Eric Dyson he's an excellent writer and a very good speaker. Maybe one of the most brilliant speakers that we know. But and I've read several of his books. That particular one just happened to be filled with problems in his arguments, so I wanted to deal with it. I think that,
and maybe it's the politically active person in me. I think that the media and people, I think the media and politicians regularly use fallacies and arguments to persuade people, and that the public at large doesn't know that that's what's being done. I'm going to be frank and say that before I studied it, I had no idea that there were so many.
Oh yeah, there's a very long list.
Right,
of,
it's like 24
logical fallacies.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount. Matter of fact, now I'm thinking when I get off the air, I might want to go back and look at some of them again.
Right, that's right. Those things are really good to know because you're right. People use them all the time in conversation, in their arguments, in particular if they're trying to persuade you of something, but we don't notice them. If you don't know about them, then they'll go right over your head.
Yep, it sounds super logical, and it's not when you think about it.
Right.
But I use the phrase with people all the time, but they have I'm sure they don't know where I get it from. Like, that's a fallacy and argument, and here's why. But they don't know where I got it from. Okay, but yeah, that was like one of the best. If I never spent another dime on my PhD, that class was worth its weight in gold. Was that? So tell us why quitting is a good thing, because I always thought, although I'm a teacher one of the things I do is teach, and I don't like the philosophy in my classroom that we tell kids that you can be anything you want. I don't think we should be telling them that, because the fact of the matter is we actually can't.
So you don't think that a person can be whatever they want to be?
No, I don't.
Well,
if I want to be a Victoria's Secret swimsuit model at 49 years old and 5'2", what am I, 160 pounds? That is not in the cards for me. So let's just be realistic. I think there should be some.
I would agree with that.
Right.
So the book Quit. I think what you're saying is true. Sometimes we do pursue goals that are not going to work for us. And my problem here is that sometimes when we do that, we should give up that goal if it's not going to work, but we don't. And I'm afraid that too many people don't give up on certain goals because of the stigma or the negative connotation associated with the idea of quitting. So because the public, because of the opinion of other people, because of the emotional struggles that we have inside, can prevent us from stopping and redirecting our energies into something that may be more productive.
Exactly. Like that meme that says it's time to tell your boyfriend to stop rapping and just get a CDL. It may be it's shady, but it may be time.
The problem is that he may not want to stop rapping, because if he stops rapping, then he's going to be looked at as a failure. And the idea of quitting, what we've done with the word quit is we've turned the word into a negative thing, and we actually have made the word quit synonymous with failure. So therefore, if you quit something, you're looked at as a loser. And obviously people don't want to be considered a loser. But this idea that winners never quit and quitters never win is a total fallacy, is wrong, and in fact it's ridiculous and it's harmful, because successful people really do quit all the time.
Yeah, I mean, what could Kenny Rogers say? You got to know when to fold them, right? You got to know.
Absolutely.
It's about knowing when to give up. And I think that is the hard part, especially if you, I don't know, if you're a person of faith, which I am. I think it actually makes it even harder, right? In a way, to know when God is saying no, and to know when it's really done. Like, am I not showing good faith in God if I'm giving up? Like, I think when you're a person of faith, in a way, it does make it harder. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that is true that sometimes people's faith can interfere with their lives, which is obviously not a good thing because, in fact, your faith ought to be enhancing your life. It should be making your life better. But what we do is we use faith as some sort of restriction against the things that we can or cannot do. So when people look at their faith and they say that, well, I can't give up because that means that I don't have faith or my faith is not strong enough, well, that is the wrong mentality. You should not proceed based on that because God gave us obviously a brain, and we should be able to use that brain to think logically, to rationalize, and to reason out certain courses of action. And just because something is not working for you does not mean that, oh, if I stop doing this, I don't have faith, because it could be just the opposite, that you recognize that God gave you the skills to understand this doesn't work, and then you can redirect those efforts into something else. So I think when we don't give up things, it's more about our personal feelings, our
pride.
Right, our pride, we're embarrassed, and there's things about it that makes us not want to quit things. And when you're talking about, faith, then, of course, relationships is a big deal, and in particular, marriage. So people are married, and sometimes, and I'm not saying that I'm an advocate of divorce, but sometimes the relationship does not work, and people are very reluctant to give up the relationship because of the embarrassment associated with the idea of giving up that marriage.
Oh, yes, I see it all the time. Now, my tolerance for foolishness is like 5 years.
Okay.
I'm the opposite, and I'm not proud of that. I've been married twice. I got a 5-year tolerance. Now, I've been judged heavily for that, and I should be, because marriage is a very serious thing. I don't have any children, though, either. And I think that's definitely a factor. Why people stay in marriages for so long. I think if I did have kids, I probably would have been in a situation where I would have stayed longer. But I also think that's why having kids is you gotta really think long and hard. I was even though I was married, I was like, gotta think long and hard about having kids with this dude. I mean, marriage is one thing, but having kids with you is a whole nother thing. So,
well, if you marry someone, you probably should think highly enough of that person where you would be okay with having kids with the person.
Yes, you're right.
The person in the first place.
I can't argue. I can't argue with that. You're right. You shouldn't be marrying them if you don't want to have kids with them. But yeah.
But I do think that I would take issue with the idea that you should be criticized or looked at critically for giving up the marriage. I think that is one of the problems with the idea of quitting. Because, for example, I know this woman, her name is Nicole. She lives out in Southern California. She was married to this guy. She was overweight, so her husband would fat shame her, and she had a baby. After she delivered the baby, the excess skin from the delivery, her husband comes into the bedroom one day, reaches down, she's sitting on the bed, kind of slaps the skin on her stomach and says, "Do you think I could be attracted to that?" Well, this is obviously a very toxic and abusive relationship. But she didn't want to give up the relationship because of the emotional attachment to this whole idea of marriage. And
That's
again, I'm not
horrible.
suggesting that people should get a divorce. However, this is extremely unhealthy for her mentally, physically. I mean, it's abusive.
Absolutely.
So she should give that up, and she should feel free. So that is actually my goal. My mission is to help the world free themselves from this stigma, this negative association to the idea of quitting, because I think that people need to feel free to quit and to give up the things that don't work in their lives, because you cannot move on to something better, something that's going to make you more happy, more successful. You can't move on to that thing if you continue to hold on to the thing that's not working.
No, I will quit you like I never knew you. I will cut you off. Sister don't have no trouble quitting. It is not a problem over here. But I know that's terrible. But seriously, I really don't. But only because by the time it's gotten to that, even with a job, I'm the same way. Once it's gotten to that situation, I've already done the mourning and the crying, and I've already done that. So by the time I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm out, it's not more you can say to me, really. Because I've already done all that. I've already had the conversations have been had, the swollen eyes and the crying all night. All that's been done. So, like, there shouldn't be any, like, shock. I always love this. It was so sudden. For you, because you weren't paying attention. One son for me. Where were you? You know, so I don't. But I do think it happens a lot. I see it a lot in relationships, and you look at, you know, friends and family and stuff, and I'm like, why are you still there putting up with that foolishness? Like, life is absolutely just too short, and to be no. Why are you not dating? Why are you not? Why? Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of conversations and text messages, and it's a lot. Not that I don't occasionally, but like to be like online and doing, it's a whole lot. That's a whole lot of stuff. So, you know, you do have to be judicious about. Sometimes you got to quit a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah, there's many things that people should quit. I mean, obviously, people are working jobs that they hate.
Quit.
People are in relationships that are very toxic. People even live in towns and cities that they don't want to be living in. I'm in Chicago, and over the winter, there was a number of people who have said, you know, this weather is crazy. I'm going to move. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to go to Texas, or I'm going to go to California because the weather is so bad. But they don't go, and they'll say this for years. Well, why? It's because they cannot quit living in that particular town. There's probably some emotional attachment. There's something going on inside that is preventing them from moving. So, I think that in my book, Quit, I created this 4-step process. So what I did is I've read every book, and I've studied every theory that I can on the subject of quitting. And then I developed this 4-step process on how people can be a successful quitter. And the 4-step process is designed to help the person that wants to quit, and it doesn't matter what the thing is that you need to give up. And it's designed to take you through these 4 steps to help you move from where you are to where it is you need to be.
I'm listening.
Okay. So I'll give you an idea about the 4-step process.
Yeah.
What I did is I used the word quit, QUIT, as an acronym for my process. So Q, which is step 1, stands for quit quickly. Quit quickly. And that means that if you are involved in something, and the sooner The faster you can determine that thing is not going to work for you, and the faster you disengage from that thing, the more success you're going to have in your life. And people who are very successful, they know this. They quit fast and they quit often. In other words, they're not stuck in a rut. As soon as they recognize it doesn't work, they give it up and they move on to something else. So that's step number one, is to recognize what's happening with your life and to quit very quickly.
So don't peel the Band-Aid off. Just rip that baby off and keep it pushing.
Yeah. And the faster you do that, the better you're going to be, the more success you're going to have. You're going to be more happy in your life, and you're going to get where you're trying to go a lot quicker if you quit quickly versus kind of lingering and letting the thing fester. Because
that anxiety, I was telling somebody this the other day, they were talking about moving. And I said to the person, I said, that indecision is what's getting you. That's where the anxiety is coming from. It's the indecision that will mess with you.
Right.
Like, make a decision and do it.
That is true. Yeah. And like I said, the faster you can make that decision, the better off you're going to be.
Yep. Pick something. Okay, good. Go ahead.
All right. So that's the cue. U is for understand the negative emotions, because we should recognize that the primary reason we don't give up things is because of the negative emotions, because of the stigma attached to the idea of quitting, because of pride, because of embarrassment. So all of these negative emotions is the thing that prevents us most often from quitting something. So that's what the U is, to understand those negative emotions. In fact, they did a study. Some scientists, they took two groups of people. One group was, they gave them a jigsaw puzzle. They said to the first group, complete this puzzle until you're done. Then they gave a second group the same puzzle. They said to the second group, complete this puzzle until you're done. Except they interrupted the second group and they would not allow them to finish the puzzle. And at the end of the study, what they found is that the group who did not finish the puzzle, they continued to think about completing the puzzle. In fact, they thought about the puzzle twice as much. In other words, the group who finished the puzzle, they were happy. They went on about their business. The other group kept thinking back to the puzzle, like, I wanted to finish the puzzle. I didn't get a chance to finish the puzzle. So what they concluded in the study is that our brain is hardwired for completion. So this can explain why we have so much trouble quitting things, because we want to go back and finish some unfinished business. So in other words, whatever you start, whether it's a relationship and you feel attached to that particular individual, or whether it's a job, whether it's a bad habit, whether it's overeating, smoking, whatever it is, our brains are hardwired for completion, and we don't want to give up things. So whenever we stop something in the middle of the thing, our brain keeps thinking about that thing. We keep going back. It puts us in a loop.
Yeah,
so that's the second step.
I'm annoyed for them. Like, I want to go back and hurt somebody. No, what are you interrupting them with doing their puzzle for? I really like puzzles. I'm very annoyed for them. Okay, go.
So that was the second step. Understand the negative emotions. And the third step, the I, is for initiate a new goal.
Okay.
So in other words, after you quit something, the idea for quitting is not just to stop and go home and do nothing. The idea is to reposition yourself, to realign your goals. So as soon as you quit one thing, you should then replace that. And again, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're talking about a job, if you're going to quit the job, you should have another job lined up. If you're going to quit smoking, you should have something to replace that activity. If you're going to quit eating sweets, you should have something else that you do to replace the urges, because your brain is going to continue to want and desire that particular thing. We learned that from that puzzle experience.
Okay. So I just want to stop you for 1 second there and make sure that we hone in on this. So the key when you are dieting or something like that is not I think where people struggle is, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to have this anymore. I'm not going to be able to have that. But if you make the decision that, okay, instead of having this, I'm going to have that, and you make that conscious decision, then your brain is saying, I'm completing that circle, so I'm going to be okay. It provides a sense of security. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
That's good. Okay.
And if you're going to do that in terms of, you want to stop eating something, you should not think of it as, I can't eat this. You should think of what you can eat. So in other words, oh, you know what, I like to eat vegetables, or I like to eat fruit, or whatever it is. So think of what you do want to eat, not what you don't want to eat. There was another study. And in this other study, there was a group of business women. They took these women, they gave them, they put them on this exercise regimen because they wanted to be more healthy. And at the end, they told the women, if you're not going to do something, let's say you're going to skip your workout. Somebody wants you to go and hang out, and have fun or whatever. Do something else instead of your exercise regimen. And then they said, to one group, they said, use the words, I can't. So if someone says, oh, let's go and hang out, you will say, I can't go to the mall, or I can't miss my exercise. The second group, they told them use the word, I don't. So instead of saying, I can't miss my exercise, then you should say, I don't miss it. Or if someone offers you a piece of cake, and you don't want to eat sweets, instead of saying, I can't eat sweets, you should say, I don't eat sweets. What they found out in that study is that the words themselves made a difference. The women who said, I can't eat sweets, they were successful in the exercise program about 10% of the time. The women who said, I don't eat sweets, they were successful about 90% of the time. So the words, I can't, they found were more restrictive. In other words, it was almost like you were saying to yourself, I really want to eat the cake, but I can't.
Well, that's exactly what you're saying.
It's an external, right? It's an external restriction.
Sure.
But the women who said, I don't eat cake, it was empowering. In other words, they were making a decision. Oh, sure, I can eat the cake, but I don't do that. I don't eat cake. I don't miss my exercise. So just changing your language, using the words I don't instead of I can't, can be very powerful in terms of you reaching your goals, being able to disengage from one thing and re-engage to another.
I like it. That's very, very good. Okay.
So that was the I to initiate new goals, because we recognize that if you're going to quit and give up one thing, you have to have a new goal. It makes it much easier to transition from thing A to thing B if you have a new goal. If you don't have a new goal, then you become very frustrated. And that's when the embarrassment set in. Just like, for example, a job. If you're going to quit a job and you go home and you're not working at all, that's embarrassing for a lot of people. On the other hand, if you quit job A and then you work job B, you feel much freer to tell people, oh, well, I don't work there anymore. I work over here, or I don't do that anymore. Now I do this. Versus not doing anything, and that's when the embarrassment comes in, and that's when people are very reluctant to give up something. So you always want to replace the first thing. So that's the I for initiate a new goal. And then the last step, number 4, which is the T, is to transform your behavior. That just means that you can't keep doing the same thing you were doing if you're going to try to do something different. So once you create those new goals, you have to figure out, what is it that I need to do different now than I was doing before? And then that's going to help you reach your success, become more successful and achieve the goals that you were going after. So anyway, that's the 4-step process, QUIT, quit quickly, understand the negative emotions, initiate the new goal, and then transform your behavior.
That is excellent. How do you find, is there a way to find out what it is that that you need to do differently? And here's why I ask, because I'm all about that, right? Doing things differently. Once you get around a certain age, right, you start looking at your life and you're like, okay, there's some things that I should probably be doing differently. Right?
That is correct.
I'll be 49 in September. There's some things that I'd like to look a little different. So I'm trying to make some changes. But I think that when you're always with yourself, so to speak, you don't know, like, you think you're doing things differently, but you're not really. Am I making any sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, like, how do you know that you're not? In other words, like, you think that you're wearing a different dress, but you just wearing the same dress, but it's purple instead of red. Like, you know what I mean? Like, girlfriend, that is the same dress. You know what I mean?
Yes,
that's the same dude, but he's he's a 6'3" black guy instead of a 5'7" white guy. That's the same dude. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, there's three. Now, there's many things that you can do to transform your behavior, but there are three things in particular that people can do. Now, once again, there's many things people can do. I mean, for one, most people should quit talking too much, and that's probably at the top of the list. Most of us talk too much. We don't listen enough. God has given us one mouth and two ears, which means that we ought to be listening twice as much as we talk. Most people do the opposite. We talk twice as much as we listen. That's one simple thing you can do just right away to transform your behavior. Because normally, somebody is probably telling you, that dress is not really looking good on you, and we don't listen. So I think that's one thing you can do to transform your behavior.
Because they're wrong. I'm kidding. Go ahead. That was a joke. Go ahead.
well, there's several things. So a person, one of the things that we can do, and this can work almost in any area of your life, and that is to get yourself involved in a mastermind group. A mastermind group is a big thing. In other words, a mastermind group is just a group of people who you can associate with, you can network with, bounce things off of, and those people can help share ideas. Now, if you're talking about dress, and you're kind of joking, but this is actually a pretty serious thing, because we know that people, even though they should not do this, but people do make judgments about you based on your appearance. So you may decide, and I don't mean you personally, but just kind of generally the audience, may decide that in your mastermind group, and these are people who you respect, people who you trust, and you share ideas with each other, that may be a good place to say, hey, I want to be a public speaker. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an accountant. Whatever it is, do you have any? Does anybody in the group have any suggestions about the clothes that I wear? Should I try something different? Does this work? Am I doing the right things? So a mastermind group can be a very powerful tool for people to get the advice, because you're right, you can't see yourself as other people see you.
Yes, that is excellent. That's excellent advice. I've never heard of that. I've heard of a mastermind group, but I've never heard of joining one or even thought about joining one. And I know for sure I can't be the only one with this problem. I don't think I see myself anywhere close to the way other people see me. In fact, I know that for sure. So
yeah, and that's true of many people. And again, that's why a mastermind group is so powerful, because that those people, and again, it has to be a group of people who you respect and you value their opinion. But if you can join one of those types of groups, and they're becoming much more prevalent, these days, So if you find one of those groups, that would be a very good way to help you to, to kind of transform your behavior, to evaluate what it is you're doing. And generally, this is in relation to your success, and helping you reach your goals, not so much your personal dress or things like that. However, since the way your appearance is a very big deal in terms of your success, and people don't recognize that. But so that still would be appropriate to have those types of conversations within that group.
Appearance is really something that gets missed a lot. I think people don't. I'm surprised that people don't understand how important that is. I'm mystified, frankly.
Mm-hmm. I think that we want to think in an ideal world that your appearance doesn't matter, but we know that is totally untrue. The moment people see you, it takes them about 3 seconds to make a judgment about you, just based on your appearance.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like many things about the world that I wish were not true. That's absolutely accurate, and it's a shame, but that falls into the the world is unfair file. People hate for me to say that about things like that, but it's unfair. I'm 5'2", also unfair. I mean, what do you want?
Yeah.
It's not right, but there's lots of, until Jesus comes back, this is where we are. So
that is correct.
You know what I mean? So let's just deal with what is. But no, I absolutely agree with you. So and I do think that quitting does have this false. How do you balance effort and determination, right? Like fulfilling your dreams and the effort and determination it takes to fulfill your dreams and overcoming adversity versus knowing when to quit. How do you balance those two things out?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that can cause issues for many people. So a couple of things that I would say about that. One is that there is a very high need to be able to persevere, to be able to push through. So in my book, I do discuss times when you should not quit and times when you should think about quitting. For example, you should think about quitting if you're doing something and the thing that you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's a relationship, if it's a job, if it's a business, if it's an investment. If the thing you're doing is a dead end, in other words, you see no future in that thing, that's a good time when you should think about quitting. If the thing that you're doing is causing you stress, in other words, it's impacting your health, your mental health, your physical health, that's a good time when you should think about quitting. If you dread doing the thing, in the morning, you have a problem. In the evening, you have a problem. During the day, when you're doing it, you have a problem. You should think about quitting that thing. So those are some of the times when you ought to think about giving it up. On the other hand, you should not think about quitting. In other words, you ought to persist. You ought to keep going if you're thinking about quitting just because it is hard. So you should not quit something just because it's hard, because that's when you should push through and persevere, because that helps build character. That helps make you more competent. That gives you better experiences, make you more knowledgeable. You are going to be more successful if you're able to push through something, because it's hard. So you shouldn't quit just because it's hard. You shouldn't quit just because, I'm not successful yet. You shouldn't quit just because it's taken a long time for me to make this happen. Those are times when you should not quit. So it is important to understand when to quit and when to keep going.
It is, because I think that's a very difficult decision to make, to know if you're facing adversity, is this something that I should be doing or not? Like, I think about, for example, like with school, people who have, I don't know how people who have kids and things like that get their master's and their PhD and stuff like that. And I didn't find it I found it challenging, but not particularly. You know what I mean? But I did find it challenging. I found getting my master's challenging. I did it all in like my adult life, most of it. I started when I was a kid, and then I picked it back up after I got my first divorce. Finished my undergrad and then got my master's and started my doctorate. But I look at people who have kids and things like that, and it has had to be, I think, and kids and people in my class and stuff that have had kids and things like that. I was married, but it still wasn't all that. It was a lot, but not all that difficult. But I look at that and I think, they had challenges and oftentimes thought about giving up. And I wonder, how they dealt with that kind of adversity. And then sometimes people did just give up, going to school because they had so much, going on, and was it okay for them to give up? And I would often empathize with people in my class who were going through things, and I wasn't, for me, it was like, okay, I'm just tired. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I had to be up real late, because I was working full time too. But I would look at people who had like I said, if you have kids and you're going to school and married and holding down a job, you're the real MVP for real. Because I don't know how you're doing it, but that those are the types of things. Like I feel bad when people have to quit doing that or feel like they have to quit under those kinds of circumstances, or you have a learning disability. You know what I mean? Where it's going to be that much harder for you to get your education. Like you have some type of struggle like that, where it's just going to be that much more difficult for you to accomplish your mission. Should you,
Well, that is going to make it more difficult. But if you are married, and with kids and a lot of other responsibilities or learning disability or something like that, when you're trying to do something, so there's two things that's going to happen. Number one, you will have a goal. Number two, you're going to do things to help you reach that goal. So I think that if your goal is to get your doctorate degree, if that's your goal, it doesn't matter if you have you've got a family, you've got kids and other responsibilities. You should not quit just because, wow, this is hard and I've got these other responsibilities. What you ought to do is not quit the goal itself, but you might quit certain things along the way. In other words, if you're trying to get a doctorate degree, you might have to quit sleeping so much. In other words, you're going to have to stay up late or get up early in the morning.
Yeah.
You may have to quit hanging out with your crew, and give up some of your leisure time with your friends. You might have to quit watching as many movies and going to the show or the theater. So there are things you might quit along the way. In other words, if you're doing something that's taking you off or sidetracking you from that goal, you may have to quit those things, not quit the ultimate goal. If the end goal is to get the doctorate degree, you keep pushing toward that. But you have to quit certain things along the way to reposition yourself back toward that goal.
That's true. That's very true. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of discipline. And I think as with anything, you don't necessarily realize what it's going to take until you're in the midst of it.
Right.
And someone asked me, someone posted on Facebook earlier today, like, what if you've done both, what type of schooling do you prefer, online or in the classroom? Ironically, me being an adjunct professor and a classroom teacher, I do both in the classroom. I'm a classroom teacher, adjunct professor. I teach foundations of computer science. and financial lit in high school and other stuff in high school. But I prefer to go to school myself online. But so I said online, but it requires a lot of discipline. And that's what I meant by that was, there's a lot of I can't go out. I don't go out on Friday nights because what I do on Friday nights is write papers because there's a lot of paper writing, as I'm sure you're aware.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research. You're writing a lot of papers. It's all about school. You really just don't have your times of going out are pretty much a wrap for a minute.
That's right. So, and you've got to be willing to do that. You've got to be willing to give up those other things. Now, on the other hand, sometimes people may change their goals. If your goal changes, so if your goal is the same, you need to give up the things that are taking you off track to reaching that goal. On the other hand, if your goal changes, and that's okay too. If you are trying to get a PhD or if you're trying to do whatever, but your goal has changed, then it's okay to quit that. If you quit the goal itself, that's perfectly fine. Because first of all, our life circumstances will change, and that will dictate what it is we do or don't do. We're all familiar with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan quit baseball and came back to basketball and won a three-peat. And The Rock quit wrestling, became a superstar action hero, and Schwarzenegger quit being an action hero and became a governor. So those people, their life circumstances changed. Michael Jordan originally quit basketball when his father was killed. He said that his dad always wanted him to be a baseball player. His head was no longer in the game of basketball, although he was one of the greatest basketball players we've ever seen. Well, he went to play baseball. He was very mediocre. And what did he do? He quit and went back to basketball. Well, this is good because what he did is he gave himself that space that he needed to work through his dad's death. And then he went back to basketball and he was a champion again and won 3 more championships. But if he was reluctant to quit, so he didn't quit basketball and he continued playing even though his head wasn't in the game, he may not be the superstar that we know now. And if he went to baseball and then he was reluctant to quit that and go back to basketball, he may have never won the championships. And the same, The Rock quit wrestling. Well, at some point, your body cannot take the physical punishment of wrestling, so he went and became an action movie star. And Schwarzenegger got too old to be an action star, became a governor. So we need to recognize that circumstances change, your goals change. If your goals change, then it's okay to quit that goal. So we have to do both. Sometimes the goal stays the same and you quit the things that are sidetracking you. But other times, the goal itself has changed and people ought to feel free to give up that if they choose.
That's very true. How can you get past the stigma? Is that a personal thing that you like? I think I was kind of born with that. I think it's a blessing to not. I wouldn't say I completely don't care what other people think. It's not that I don't care. It's just that maybe I don't. I do care. I care, but only to the extent of you can't care enough for other people to run your life. Like when I got my second divorce, like people were trying to call me, trying to convince me not to get my second divorce. I'm like, okay, but you don't have to. Okay, you're okay. If you think he's so great, you marry him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, but, and then like throwing all kinds of shade, and it's like, okay, but I'm done. And that's my mom will say this about me once I make a decision. That's it. I will just do it 180. But the thing about me that people realize is that I've already invested. If you know me well enough, you know I've already invested. So I guess I said that to say, but there are some people who don't have that. And how do you develop that backbone to resist the stigma, to resist like what other people are going to say about you quitting that thing or that job or that whatever?
Right. Well, that takes me back to my 4-step process that I mentioned earlier. Remember QUIT?
Oh, right. Understand.
So going to that last step, which is transform your behavior. So people do certain things because of their background, because of their personality, because of their experiences, and so forth. Well, if you get to that 4th step, the T, which is transform your behavior, many people care a lot about what other people think of them. And that's fine if you care about what other people think, as long as it's not impacting your health and well-being. But if what other people think about you is so pervasive in your life that it impacts your health, your well-being, your happiness, your success, then obviously that's when you should not be caring about that much. So if you are that person and you can't get past, this idea, well, I'm really going to be embarrassed because of what other people think or something like that, then that's when the T comes into play, and you need to be able to transform your behavior. In other words, you can't keep doing the same thing you've been doing. And there are, again, techniques that you might be able to use to help yourself transform that behavior. And I mentioned one earlier, get a mastermind group, for example.
Right.
There's other things that you might be able to do. Another thing you might be able to do is get yourself, there's something called an accountability partner, where you find a person, and this is just one person that you can find. Again, it should be someone you respect. You respect their opinion, you trust their opinions, and that's someone that you can talk to on a regular basis. Let's say once a week, for example. And you can talk through those things with that individual. So if you are reluctant, say, to give up something because of what people may think about you, you may be able to have a conversation with your accountability partner about that. And the way that will work is that you would then, for example, you might say, I'm in this toxic relationship, or I'm in this job that's making me sick. I want to quit the relationship. I want to quit the marriage. I want to quit the job. So what you would do with the accountability partner is the first week when you talk, you'll say, well, my goal, for this week, I want to do X, whatever this next step is in your process. Then they'll tell you what they want to do. You tell them what you want to do. The next time when you talk, then you can hold each other accountable. You can say, okay, did you do X, or what did you do this week, or where are you in that process? So therefore, if you are so concerned about what other people think and you're reluctant to give up things, and you work through that with your accountability partner, then each week that person can say, okay, what are you doing about this, or where are you at in this particular situation? So that may be another thing that could help you, if you have that problem.
I love it. That is wonderful. Well, you have been extraordinary this hour. Just really informative. Thank you so much. Really.
Well, thank you.
Just fantastic.
I appreciate you having me on. You are amazing, and I was very excited when I met you at Publicity Summit. So thank you for having me. And I guess I should mention that as far as the book, Quit, The Last Principle of Success, people can actually get the book on Amazon.com, or they can also go to my website, which is thequitdoctor.com.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you. Excellent. And where do you have any social media where people can follow you, like you, whatever?
Oh, sure. Well, if you just go to my website, there'll be a link to all of my social media. But the Quit Doctor, that's probably the easiest thing for people to remember.
Okay.
TheQuitDoctor.com. And then from there, they'll be able to, they can go and they can get my book, they can get my Facebook, Twitter, or whatever.
Is doctor spelled out or DR?
Doctor. So TheDoctor. The Quit, QUIT, Doctor, DOCTR. So doctor is spelled out. The Quit Doctor, all the words spelled out.
Okay, I just wanted to. Okay, I just wanted to pop it into the Facey chat. That's all. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show. You did an excellent job. You are listening to the Business Diva Melanie Collette. I want to thank everyone for being on the show. I want to thank you, Dr. Stanley G. Robertson. Fantastic job. I want to thank columnist Nathan Lewis, author of The Magic Formula. You were fantastic. I want to thank everybody in the Facey chat, everybody in SHR Media Land who got to listen live. Finally, I think our little glitch that we were having is finally back up and running. If you're listening as a download via iTunes or any of the wonderful podcast platforms, thank you so much for listening. I want to thank my sponsors, Eva Rosenberg, aka the Tax Mama, Robert Houston, the creditrepair.biz guy, and of course John Campbell, the Biz Social Personal Touch guy. Thank you guys all for supporting Money Talk with Melanie. And remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money. Have a great weekend.